Let's see, where were we?
This is mankind's legacy. Whales hunted to the brink of extinction.
Oh yeah. Every time I see this scene, I'm aghast. It's not about the images, it's the idea that an extremely long and gore-filled video is being broadcast for people who just wanted to come and see some whales. I predict this thing getting shut down in real life in the first hour, as weeping, scarred children who just came to see the cute whales shiver in terror like someone's forced them to watch them perform a vivisection on Elmo. If a dad smashed the TV in with a tour guide's head just to make the horrible images stop, could you see any jury convicting? Okay, let's go on and look at the beautiful animals, and try not to think about their 200 feet of intestines spilling out like you just saw in the video. Aside of the gory pictures, the Institute does have 2 actual whales that Kirk thinks they could use, but Spock doesn't think they can just take them away without their permission, so he goes into the tank and mind melds with it. Given this era and the obsession people at the time had with dolphins and whales, I'm surprised at Jillian's response. I figured this kind of thing must happen every week. I touched the whale, now I'm healed! Look, I've got neither love nor hate for whales. I think it's a good thing that humpbacks are no longer endangered, and concede there are many things my fellow humans engage in that are absurd and short-sighted, which is frustrating. And it's also why I'm astonished at the defense of the whale probe when it so perfectly describes man's approach to the environment at his worst, completely ignorant of the destruction it's wielding. But I also lump in with the absurd some of the things that go to the other extreme, like on the commentary for this very film when Shatner speculates whales may be more intelligent than we are. My feeling is, if for the last 5,000 years tiny men riding a chuck wagon like those dog food commercials had been killing people, we probably would have figured out we should stay away from them. Or put it another way, it's hard to defend the intelligence of someone who can be repeatedly tricked and killed by 3 guys in a rowboat, each of whom weighs as much as your turds and are not exactly the smartest members of their own species. Nobody ever lists rocket scientists and brain surgeons alongside whalemen. Kirk advises Spock to avoid swearing, since he's not terribly good at it, and suggests maybe to avoid polluting the timeline, blowing up the universe or making Hitler president or something, he should avoid telling the truth when it'd be inappropriate.
I don't mean lie, but you could exaggerate.
Exaggerate?
Exaggerate. You've done it before, can't you remember?
The hell I can't.
On their way back, Jillian decides to pick up Kirk and Spock and give them a lift back to San Francisco, no doubt hoping to figure out what they're up to. Spock, as a Vulcan, is inclined to never lie despite what Kirk said, which obviously complicates matters, no matter how much Kirk tries to keep things simple and on mission.
You're not exactly catching us at our best.
That much is certain.
Kirk finally decides to move to an area where he always shines, namely, charming women, so he suggests they all go out to dinner together. The almost Abbott and Costello-like nature of Kirk and Spock's interplay is part of what makes this film so fun.
You guys like Italian?
No.
Yes.
Yeah,
No.
no.
Yes.
No.
Yes. I love Italian. And so do you.
Yes.
So they drop Spock off in the park, continuing to show a man interacting with nature so well. Meanwhile, Scotty and McCoy have tricked a guy at Plexicorp into giving them a tour, and then trading for everything they'll need to make the whale tank in exchange for the formula for transparent aluminum, or transparent aluminium if you live in Europe. McCoy questions the wisdom of altering the future, but Scotty says for all we know, this guy invented the stuff. Could be, but then we haven't seen it yet, at least not in this form. The closest we have is specially baked aluminum oxynitride ceramic backed up by glass and polymers. This has got hydrogen and silver in the molecule, so it looks like this product's still in R&D. Oh, and remember, this was back when Bon Jovi's Slippery When Wet went platinum. Or platinium if you live in Europe. At dinner, Kirk gets Jillian to tell him that the whales will be tagged so they can be tracked, and he starts trying to get his hands on the frequency. But a poorly timed call from Scotty interferes in the plan, so he asks to admit to her what he's really doing, and she's naturally incredulous.
Don't tell me. You're from outer space.
No, I'm from Iowa. I only work in outer space.
Meanwhile, Chekhov and Uhura have finally found the vessel in question, the carrier Enterprise. The two get beamed in and collect the photons, but there's so little power that they can only beam back one at a time. Uhura goes back first, but then there's not enough power to beam Chekhov back at all, and he gets captured. The interrogation scene gives Koenig some great comedic material.
What do you think?
He's a Ruskie.
That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Of course he's a Rusky, but he's a retard or something.
Chekhov makes a break for it, but takes a little tumble and winds up with a concussion. They work through the night to try to get the power restored so they can try to find and rescue him. The next morning, Jillian arrives at the Institute. "Hey, Doc, another group of preschoolers saw that whale vid and puked. I took care of it." Jillian learns that the whales have already shipped out, and like most people with a strong compassion for all living things, then gets violent with him. She returns to the park to talk to Kirk, but as concerned as he might be for the mission, their primary concern right now is Chekhov. McCoy insists that he be allowed to try and help, and Spock, now showing his personality returning more towards what it was, likewise insists that they must help Chekhov, that it is the only human thing to do. This is when McCoy gets to do his thing, unable to stop himself from helping people despite everything that he had said about not altering the future, and grumbling all the while over the comparably primitive medical procedures of this time. Chekhov's artery needs repair, but since they don't know how to do that, they're just going to relieve the pressure. But McCoy says he needs that like he needs a hole in the head. Actually, it is a hole in the head. I guess that's why he's so upset. Chemotherapy, trepanation. These people probably haven't even discovered the heart's located in the leg yet. McCoy gets to work, muttering about the primitive medicine as he does so. Stay focused, Doc. Do remember that the phrase you're most famous for is announcing that someone's dead. Luckily this time he doesn't have to, and they make their escape, and Jillian tricks her way into coming on board with them to go get the whales, and just in time. Even though they've been in the water for about half an hour, already a whaling ship has found them and is preparing to go in for the kill. Man, if whales are that unlucky, their extinction is just unavoidable. They're going to wind up falling down stairs or accidentally swimming into Cthulhu's mouth or something. Luckily their ship gets in the way of the harpoon, and the whaling ship takes off, wheels spinning like the opening of Gilligan's Island. They beam up the whales and slingshot back to the future. Unfortunately, they get affected by the giant aerosol can and wind up crashing into San Francisco Bay. Kirk, per the hero clause, rescues Scotty and Jillian and gets the whales out in time so that they can answer the probe.
Why don't they answer? Why don't they sing?
And if you think that's silly, let me tell you, this is exactly what the studio wanted, for the conversation to have subtitles. What could that possibly be? So the whale probe honors the request and fucks off, and the planet quickly returns to normal thanks to the unknown whale ability to undercrank the film. There is celebration, but then the crew's hauled before the Federation Council. However, in light of the rescue, all charges but one are dropped, the stealing of President Pratchett's hat. For that, Kirk is demoted to captain and will be placed in command of a starship. Everyone's happy, except Kirk, who learns that Jillian is leaving to join a science vessel, and Kirk will need to take up his own command now. But first, Spock meets with his father, indicating that he is now fully back to normal, and telling him to tell his mother that he feels fine. They head towards the Excelsior, expecting they'll wind up with that, but instead reveal a new Enterprise A, which they gleefully take off in and head towards the final frontier. Follow-up. Annoying character is awarded to the guy in the bus, who is given his comeuppance. We have a burn baby burn for the Klingon key of prey that crashed into the bay. Final score for Star Trek IV The Voyage Home is 7 out of 10, and I know that'll raise some hackles. Remember that all scores are relative to the other films in the series, and while it is definitely a good film, its overall story was a bit on the fluffy side. It stands out less as a great Trek film than it does a great time travel comedy. It does show that Trek can retain its best elements without a singular villain or the need to fire weapons to deal with problems.
Are you sure it isn't time for a colorful metaphor?